What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, all that stuff. We're joined here again by Carter, who at this point I feel like doesn't really need much of an introduction. The videos have been popular. People are giving good feedback. So we got Carter here. How you doing, man?
Good, man. It's good to be back. We were
Hell
talking
yeah.
before. We're both a little disheveled today, so it's a
It's
little
a
sloppy.
we're
So
schmooting on a Sunday. It's awesome.
I feel like Trayvon Martin.
Hope hopefully you don't meet the same fate. I don't think you will, though. I don't think you will. Damn, we started off with
I'm
with
not
a
planning.
fire.
I'm not planning on assaulting anybody
I
today.
hope not, and I great way to start. I love it. Um, so today, as you can tell by the title of the video, we're going to be discussing a topic that um, I just want to set the framing really quick before we get started on this, because I don't think that the nuance of the free speech issue is necessarily on the radar of a lot of just run-of-the-mill conservatives. So I think for me at least, and you may disagree here, and we can get into the back and forth here in a bit, but for me personally, the the conservative case, I think there's two ways to put it. The conservative case against free speech, the way I would probably put it is the limitations of free speech absolutism.
Mhm.
And I don't think that that nuance is really um, it's not really talked about enough on the right because we're always playing defense. I think that's why this conversation has never come up. But for me, at least, this issue is important once we win, as far as like what kind of speech we want promoted and not propagated. Um, so I think for me, in 2020 right now, I'm not advocating for any censorship. What I'm saying is that we need to have a more nuanced discussion around the topic of free speech. So right now, I think, sure, it's important as far as optics go and as far as our talking points on this side of Twitter and the right wing and paleoconservatism go. Yeah, it's important for us to be pro free speech all the way. I'm a free speech absolutist, the Dave Rubin thing. Um, but I do think there's nuance to it because our enemies are not playing by the same rules. We're playing two different games here. The left would never advocate for free speech absolutism, but here we are sheepishly on this side saying, please just let all the sides talk. Let's just all have it out. And
Yeah,
that gets missed on a lot of conservatisms,
yeah.
a lot of conservatives that the left is not playing the same game as us. So what's your opening salvo here?
You know, it's an interesting thing to try and nuance because I think to your point, when we talk about free speech absolutism, you know, yeah, I mean, probably in an ideally structured country, free speech absolutism, it can work. And what I mean by that is everybody can speak. So what that looks like now in a contemporary format, Alex Jones is on social media. People aren't being shadow banned. Everyone's on YouTube. There's no demonetization. And we truly have I'm using this term semi-ironically, a marketplace of ideas.
Ooh, free
So
market.
I'm not, and
No,
I'm
no, no,
not
I know what you mean.
right. So in theory, no, I'm not opposed to it. Now, again, let's discuss that in tandem with some other things. One of the things that I feel very strongly about is the need to reform voting rights. And I'll just get into it. I think probably less than 5% of people in the United States should be allowed to vote. We've talked about this privately. You'd be looking at something like married men with families, and not necessarily men, but I imagine it would probably be all men, but people who
Yeah,
are high IQ, who are thoughtful and insightful, who have a working understanding of how things operate. Again, the process through which that's achieved, I don't know.
yeah,
There's no point attempting to hash that. But, so if you've got only 5% of the population is voting, then yeah, I'm probably cool with some form of free speech absolutism. So,
right.
okay. So it's not like I'm just saying, oh, I disagree with you, so you shouldn't be allowed to talk. But now, given that that's not going to happen, that's not going to happen. I mean, now we're talking about lowering the voting age to 16. We're talking about
Oh,
all kinds of things. So,
giving felons the right
well,
to vote.
so now, Yeah, giving felons the right to vote. I mean, people, some of the left want to talk about letting illegal immigrants vote, and
I
so it's
know.
absurd. A naturalized citizenship, I think, would be a good start. Like, and people say, oh, this is Jim. No, I think, you should probably have 3 generations in this country, verifiable generations in this country before you're allowed to cast a vote.
Yeah.
And that's going to hurt some conservatives. I mean, I would almost imagine if you had an election conducted just among male illegal Hispanic immigrants, I would tend to say that would probably be slightly more Republican than Democrat, if I'm being completely honest. Like,
Interesting.
maybe I'm wrong, but in my experience, you're in Texas, and
Yeah.
and I spent a lot of time in Texas. So but anyways, I don't want to get too much into that. But yeah, so naturalized citizenship, we would need some generational residency in the United States before people started voting. So that's kind of a quick thing. It was somewhat discursive, but anyways, in regards to tackling censorship, a question that I get frequently from sort of like normie conservatives or libertarians who just are not avowed leftists, they say, well, you've tweeted this about free speech, or like you referenced this, you signaled some opposition to free speech in your last video with Jordan. Like, don't you think that the best idea should win? And it's like, bro, we're being actively censored by the left.
Yeah.
They want to kill us. They think that our opinion should put us in jail. So no, I'm actually not gonna fight and die for your right to free speech.
Yeah.
I want to use the power of the state to actively suppress you. And
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be open about it in this current climate. And at the end of the day, and we talked about this in our last video, you've got good and you've got evil. All right. We're good, they're evil. Period. There's no other discussion to be had. I want to suppress your right to talk about trans issues. I want to put the producers of Cuties to death. Let's not get it twisted. Like, no, I don't agree with your right to free speech. And I know you wanted to get into art and stuff like that, but I just want to lay that as a sort of a foundational base for the conversation we're going to delve into. Is that no, I'm not going to die for your right to free speech, which you are chomping at the bit to take from me.
To take away from us. Exactly. They would love nothing more than for this conversation. Anyone to the left of even Ben Shapiro probably wouldn't even want us having this conversation, frankly.
They want us charged and convicted for this.
Exactly. Well, Ben Shapiro said it on Dave Rubin's show. Racists deserve to have their careers ruined, fired from their jobs, and they essentially what he's saying is that they need to be locked out of the free market. Right. And that's the framing. That's even someone like Ben Shapiro who's saying that. And then you ask, like, well, what are you defining as racist? And it's basically anyone who acknowledges that there are differences between the races, basically, or that group outcomes aren't entirely based on discrimination, and probably significantly less so than things like genetics.
Let me interject something really quickly. Let's look at the response to COVID. When you post on Instagram, you post on Twitter, and you share something, you share a link or something like that runs counter to scientific consensus, you're already being censored. And right. Instagram or Twitter, another one of these megacorps, come in and say, oh, here's a link to the facts about COVID-19. That's already a suppression of free speech. So they're already suppressing us. It's important to recognize it for what it is, which is outright suppression. And if they could take it further, it would turn into, and in many ways it already has, we'll get into it, it's turned into repression, where there's actual punishment and adjudication for speaking freely.
Exactly. So, well, and I think the interesting thing to look at is how mealy-mouthed and sheepish the people on the right are conservative leaders. I'm not talking about paleocons or anyone on our side. I mean, like the Dan Crenshaws and the Ben Shapiros of the world. They're playing from a losing position. They're basically saying that, well, I'm a free speech absolutist, but not for racists, and it's like the left is just going to keep expanding that window unless you kiss BLM's boots, you're banned from your bank. You know what I mean? They're just going to keep folding and keep losing the battle until you have to be a leftist or a neoliberal to be in the public square. And I think one of the important things that we're doing as far as the movement, the America First movement goes, paleoconservatism goes, is we're having an affirmative worldview rather than a defensive one. Yep. We're starting to say, actually, you know what? I don't want, and you hit the nail on the head, cuties. Cuties is the perfect example of this. I think we can probably table this for now because art will come up later. But cuties is just the perfect example. Yes, I want cuties banned. That is not a reflection of
And
free speech or freedom of expression. That's child porn.
and
That's
and
CP.
what's more is not, I don't just want cuties to be vetoed at committee. Like I go as far as, hey, you actually took material steps to advance the production of a film like Cuties.
You need
I
to
want
be
you punished. Like we need to have a serious conversation about people who try to advance pornography. Are we talking about the death penalty for them? Because
right.
they're already going to be talking about the death penalty for racist, serious imprisonment.
Oh, that conversation is already on the
It's
table.
already been, and look at Britain, look at Germany, people at France, people are already in these cucked Western European countries. They're already facing punishment for free speech. And so, but let's nuance this a little bit further. You have Ben Shapiro and and Dave Rubin, and they claim to be, free speech, even though obviously they're liars. But even just let's talk about this in media. They say, well, we still are a free speech absolutist, but when the way they defended cuties, or not, they didn't defend it, the way they sort of navigated the discussion of it was they said, well, I still believe in free speech, but I believe in decency laws. So it's like, okay, that's technically a preclusion of free speech if we're going to get technical
Because
with
that's
it.
what we're talking about here. We're talking about something like decency laws. And I think we talked about this a little bit. I'll just go into it here. We talked about this a little bit in the prep for this call. The Hays Code is a very important thing that I think people need to look up. The Hays Code it wasn't necessarily a law. That's the thing that people have to like kind of take out of their brain. Sorry. It wasn't necessarily a law. It was a code that was put in place by the Jesuits back when the Jesuits and Catholics were truly based, and when WASPs and Catholics made up a significantly higher portion of the population than they do now. It was a set of codes
and representation in media for what that's worth.
Well, exactly. This was pre-subversion era, exactly.
This was pre-World War II.
Exactly. When you had traditional America, and you probably could have had a society with free speech absolutism.
Right.
But you needed these things like the Hays Code. The Hays Code was basically, like you just said, it was Hollywood decency laws that changed state by state. Montana didn't have the same decency laws as California. But what they did was they instituted, it was just protections against indecency that went through a state committee, and they determined whether or not the movie or the show could be shown in that state. I'm sorry, I want something like that. I don't like my little cousins having the access to Netflix where they can mistakenly stumble on cuties and think that that's a cool thing. I don't want that. That's just me, man.
Here's what's crazy. You have our opinions. If we were visible enough, I've already been shadow banned. Like I've had multiple tweets get cut in half, like the likes and retweets, whatever. Yep. I've had it happen to me multiple times. So you've got me being a conservative is dangerous or harmful or could negatively affect or implicitly marginalize communities of color, just whatever the bullshit it is.
Yeah.
But then a 6-year-old with an iPad can look up a tranny gangbang on Twitter in less than 60 seconds.
Well,
what?
And that really gets into the whole freedom thing. It's like the Iraqis hate us because of our freedom. Our freedom to do what? Find child CP on the net and let my cousins become degenerates? No, I don't want. If that's freedom, I don't want a part of it.
I'm good on it. I love what Darren Beatty and Scott Greer always say when they sort of sarcastically are like, look at all that freedom. Like Iranians are just seething right now.
China could never compete with our freedom. While they're
never be this free. Like as a drag queen is teaching kindergartners how to masturbate. This is what I want. And maybe this is extreme, but Nick Fuentes feels similar. I went, oh, you're a drag queen. You just taught kindergartners how to masturbate. There's a knock at the door and you're taken outside and you're executed. I want that. I have no problem saying that publicly. I have no problem saying that in class. This isn't something that could be used against me some other day. This is something that I'll always stand by.
Pedophiles do deserve death.
Death penalty for anyone that involves sexualizing children. You want to sexualize children? Okay, boom. You can't do that anymore because you're dead.
Right.
And pedophiles are going to think twice. You're not going to be celebrated. You're not going to have a discussion with AOC about trans rights in conjunction with political liberation. You're going to talk about, you're going to teach kindergartners how to masturbate? No, you're going to die. You
Yeah,
just
no, I
die.
agree.
That's simple.
Because the children are our future, and the more you poison that well, the less credence I think is given to you in the afterlife, or our legal treatment of you. The more you sexualize kids, the less I'm inclined to be like, well, due process, and we don't know the full story. No, child pornography. You know evil when you see it, and I see that.
Right. And and now could even possibly be a time to sort of briefly touch on the the historical context of free speech in the First Amendment. Well, but first let me, because I mentioned this to you when we talked on the phone yesterday. So right now you're a conservative, all right? You're like, if you're someone who you follow me on Twitter, and you as well, kind of normie conservatives who aren't leftists, and you're watching this, and maybe you've DM'd with one of us privately, and you're saying, all right, like I've been a supporter of free speech, but Carter and Jordan, they're making some pretty decent points right now, and I guess I could see kind of where they're going with this. So let's talk about it this way. So the First Amendment was, oh no, this is what it is. So you're becoming more swayed towards America First conservatism. What did I say explicitly in our last video was America First conservatism is a rejection of Western liberalism.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
That's what it is. Western liberalism is what's led us to the election of Donald Trump, to rejection of everything that we as America First conservatives stand for as Christian nationalists. Logically and necessarily, with a rejection of Western liberalism, you have to reject some of its ostensibly foundational principles, a most visible of which is free speech. Free speech in the way that we're told is free speech. So let's get that. I just have one more quick thing. So we've got that. So understand that when your views are moving towards America First, you are having to accept that you're rejecting some of the foundational principles of Western liberalism. So we've established that. Let's go back now and let's re-examine free speech in a historical context. And Nick Fuentes is talking.
I love when he talks about this. He talks,
and it's true. Like, it's not for the Wahhabists and the Salafists and the Saudi.
Yes.
Like, it's a good quote or whatever. But the free speech was, people could gather and whatnot, but we're talking about really like political and social expression. So there was, just let's get real. There was a primary demographic to whom free speech was endowed.
Of course.
They were typically religious. They were people of honor.
Traditionally white. We got to go racial. It was. It is what it is.
It's white, but it's more so that it was the dominant demographic at the time.
Exactly. No one is. Here's the nuance. The nuance that people don't really get is that. How do I put it? If you were to filter, let's say suffrage, universal suffrage, right? If you were to filter that for land, like let's take the racial component out of that criteria, right? Yeah. And you say they have to be land owned, they have to be net tax contributors over the last 2 fiscal years.
Yeah.
They have to be married. That whatever criteria you want to put on voting, what our side thinks is probably the right criteria. Does that necessarily exclude Black people or minorities? Not necessarily. There will be a disparity in outcome, but disparity in outcome does not equal discrimination. Just because less Black people are likely to be married or be net tax contributors does not mean that the system is racist. It's just an outcome of diversity. You'll have a representation in certain areas, in certain groups that you won't have in others. It's not complicated. Asian men would probably be overrepresented in that group as opposed to Black people.
And the components that you just articulated are virtues of a stand-up citizen in a society, in a well-functioning society. So let's get that. You're telling me, and I tweet about this all the time, you're telling me some stupid e-girl who just turned 19, who says bruh and LMFAO and shit like that her voice is equal to my, no thanks, equal to
exactly.
yours.
It's okay. Not, that's what people miss. It's not even necessarily a racial component, even though it may break down along those lines.
Of course, it's not a racial component.
It's not. It's just how it's going to play out. You just hit the nail on the head. We all have the archetype of the white e-girl with the pink hair, and she's on TikTok and she's a leftist. No, she doesn't deserve a vote just as much as Jamarquius That's just the name I go with because that's just so stereotypical. She doesn't deserve a vote just as much as Jamarquius with 5 kids by 5 women who doesn't pay his taxes doesn't deserve
Right,
a vote.
right, of
It
course.
literally is not racial. It's just a matter of who are the contributors to society. And I
Yeah,
think, and I actually think that that's a parlay into free speech.
yeah,
Voting,
of course.
suffrage, universal suffrage, and free speech are two of the issues that Western liberalism, like you said, really hinges on. You have to believe that everyone is totally equal.
Yep.
Everyone is totally equal, and they all are equally smart. And if they're not, it's because of how they. Sorry.
So let's dig deeper into that. The founding fathers, they were so fearful, so wary of establishing a democracy, and they were even on a direct democracy was an absolute no. That's why we have the electoral college, a representative republic, which is so much better. So they were talking about that. And they said, look, people are going to have to stay informed. They're going to have to always have an awareness of the issues. The reality is now 80% of people, even on the right, just have no fucking clue what they're talking about, just period. And so I look at it this way. You say, well, we elect representatives in America, of course, and they say, well, we're going to elect, and by the way, we're electing representatives to make decisions for us. Okay, but if the plurality, which we can already freely admit, anyone with a brain understands, the plurality of Americans are idiots, period. So by that nature, the plurality of our representatives would have to represent idiotic interests,
Yes.
period.
Yes.
Period. And it's manifested so clearly. Our representative, and I love what Tucker says about it. Our representatives are stupid. The majority of them are not like evil. Like they're all pretty shitty people, but they're not like Hillary
Yes.
Clinton, like probably possessed by Satan.
Yeah, like literally. Yeah.
They're just idiots. The majority, they're just dumb people. Like we don't have smart people making decisions for us because we don't have smart people electing our decision makers.
And that really begs the question of, well, maybe if we restricted the rights of dumb people, we would get smarter people in office. It's like you look at someone like Ilhan Omar, and I like the standard that you set up a minute ago. You said maybe you need to have 3 generations before you can vote or before you're representative to Congress. You look at someone like Ilhan Omar, she came here recently from
She
Somalia.
wasn't even born in this country.
She wasn't born here.
She started puberty on another continent. Like, no.
That is a good point. She came here recently, wasn't born here, but then proceeds to travel here to lecture us on how evil we are, myself included, because she would lump me in with you because I'm on the right. She would lump me.
You're white adjacent.
I'm white adjacent. I'm a white nationalist adjacent or something. And it's like, no, I'm not. I just like the traditional founding, the grounding that this nation was founded on. It's really not complicated. It's really not difficult to understand if you have an IQ 120, which is frankly who I think the voting block, the populace should be that's allowed to vote. Something like that, something like an IQ test, something like the standards that we set up earlier. I just think that there's a really strong argument for not allowing universal freedom because we see the disaster that it's led to. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Like
all this freedom and you have to enjoy it. It's like, no, freedom's overrated. And as some political thinker says, when we talk about freedom, a synonym of liberty, liberty arises from order. And we live in such a disordered and chaotic society that how could we trust individuals to make well thought out decisions that are going to have a positive impact on the state of our country, on the social fabric? Well, of course we can't. And so that's why it's so critical. I say this to my friend, like, whose right to free speech are you fighting for? Some freak transsexual who like is, abusing pharmaceutical drugs and has tried to kill themselves 6 times. They're 19 years old. They've got to GoFundMe to get out of an abusive household. And they say, no, but I don't agree with that speech. But
I'll defend to the death their right. Just say it.
But I have to. But because what if they want to take away my speech? What do you mean? What if they're already doing it?
They're already doing it. It's like
they're already doing it. They want to kill you.
Like, yeah, I don't know where I don't know where, like, you got to wonder, like, and Shapiro is probably a bad example because I think he knows the game he's playing. I'm under no disillusions about Shapiro. He's high IQ, but he knows. I think of someone like maybe like a Dave Rubin is probably a better example. Total midwit, the epitome of the midwit.
Yep.
Or he
Yep.
might even be low IQ, I'm not sure. But the epitome of the midwit, and he's saying, I'm a free speech absolutist. And it's like, dude, do you understand like what's like the people in charge want your show banned, and you are the most milquetoast conservative I've ever heard in my life. They
Pete,
want they want Rogan banned off of Spotify.
Pete Buttigieg, his supporters were like, you can't go on Dave Rubin. When Pete Buttigieg was supposed to go on Dave, like, these people want to kill you. Like, they want you to die on the streets homeless, period. This isn't conjecture. I mean, this is demonstrable fact. I have, so it's, I just don't understand it, but it just shows that, and you said it nicely, is that these conservatives and these libertarian conservatives, they just don't have an affirmative worldview. It's fundamentally defensive.
It's all defensive.
Always,
It's all like
backpedaling. It's always, wow, like, and it's like
either it's either backpedaling or it's buying into their worldview. So a good example is how Dinesh D'Souza does it. He says, well, hey, liberal, did you know that you're the real racist? It's like, wow, you bought into their framing that racist, whatever that means in October 25th of 2020, whatever that means right now, you're that. And it's like, dude, you're not going to win anyone over, and two, you're ceding your moral high ground. One of the most important, and I would really urge everyone to listen to this. One of the most important podcasts I've ever listened to was Darren Beattie and Chris Buskirk. They did an episode together on American greatness, and in it, Beattie talks about compare and contrast the moral imperialism behind these two phrases, right? On the libertarian side and ostensibly the right, you have the phrase, don't tread on me. Don't tread on me. And it's basically a conservative, the Gadsden flag, it's a snake that says, don't tread on me.
Yep.
And it's sheepishly begging the powers that be not to hurt them. Please don't hurt me. And then contrast that with the framing on the left, where they say, silence is violence. So you have saying, please don't hurt me versus if you don't speak, you are committing violence against me. That's probably the most important compare and contrast you could think of, because on one side you have us begging, please just don't hurt me. And the other side is saying, speak the words, say the words, say Black Lives Matter. And I'm telling you, man, this is because when you talk to most normie cons, their whole worldview is basically don't tread on me. Like white suburban middle class people, they're just like, oh, no. As long as I can just grill in the backyard like a boomer in the 50s, then it's all good, baby. And it's like, no, they are coming for your house. They're coming for your kids.
As long as I can watch football and my taxes are reduced a little bit, I'm happy. And meanwhile, you've got these neurotic white freaks, these militant blacks coming out, and they want to kill you. I mean, they want your deed to your house signed over. They're demanding financial compensation for your complicity and structural oppression of Black and brown bodies. They've got institutional power on their side. They've got corporate power on their side, and they're coming for you.
And
let me just continue really quickly. What is the end game for these conservatives? What is it? I just don't. There's such cognitive dissonance, because they're like, well, people will like, what is it? What happens when they come to your door and they're like, sign this petition or we're burning your house down? Well, that's compelled speech.
That's violence. The NAP, Stefan Molyneux told me about the non-aggression principle.
They're going to be like, oh, it's forced speech. Great. Like, say it or we're going to kill you.
Like, it's that simple.
There's going to be some uprising of like free speech warriors who are going to exercise their Second Amendment, and the military is conservative and they're going to help out too. And we're going to just defeat these kooky leftists if it ever came to it. But just no. That, the left is able to accomplish it in such an insidious and while simultaneously sinister way. It actually isn't.
And efficient. Very efficiently.
Because it's done incrementally, where they just move the goalposts a little bit each day, really each
Every day.
they
Did you
move the
notice
goalposts.
how quickly the silence is violence meme popped up on us?
Yeah.
That only took a few months for them to say, like, either you post this black box on Instagram, and if you don't and you're white, then you're complicit in the violence against black and brown people. I
Which
don't
we
know.
know it's so ubiquitous and so pervasive, like black people being murdered, black people being hunted for sport, why would you be complicit in that? Your silence connotes violence.
Exactly. But if when you're silent, you're being violent. But when you're saying mean things, you're also being violent. So basically, what the crux of that is say exactly what I want, or else you're a racist and you deserve to have your bank account frozen. And you can't go to Tom Thumb or Kroger anymore. And you don't deserve to eat. And I'm going to laugh when your family starves.
You shouldn't have been racist.
You shouldn't have. Yeah. Yeah.
Listen.
It's so true. It's so true.
What is the thing? You should have been racist. What do they use now to justify suppression? You have free speech, but it has consequences. Free speech has consequences. Actually, no, it doesn't. That's the whole point of free speech, that it actually doesn't have any consequences, or else it's definitionally not free. It costs something.
Right.
So we've established that. And so
what was I saw this interesting tweet. It was quote tweeting the fact that I think it was Tim Scott or someone on that neocon side, Tim Scott, Nikki Haley, someone was talking about systemic racism in America, but from a Con Inc. mindset. And I'm not going to name drop him because I don't want to dox his Twitter, but it was neoliberal fan fiction. If you know who that is, our guy. He's our guy. Neolib fan fiction said something to the effect of, this is what the future is. The Republicans are basically going to be the neoliberal pro-free market party, and the left is just going to be the far left intersectional party. So you'll have intersectional neoliberalism, pro-free markets versus far left woke POC, full on we want to murder white.
But it's still just corporatized,
exactly.
Neoliberal. It's neoliberal left. Like it's
all of it's neoliberal. It's all neoliberal.
It's corporatized, it's neoliberal. So let's not have any illusions. It's why the people like who are the socialists, like we hate socialism crowd, and they're so stupid. What do you think we're ever gonna have socialism? You think AOC is a real socialist?
Let me ask you this. This question just came.
It's just a neoliberal tool of power.
This one just came to my head. I just thought of this. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. What do you think ends up becoming of someone like AOC? Because here's how I'll frame it. She's how old is she? Mid-30s. She's really young in terms of politics.
She's like 29 or 30 or something.
Wow. So she's at wall. She's at wall.
Yeah.
But Pelosi has been around for as long as I can remember, and same with Biden. So what do you think becomes with someone like an AOC? Does she actually, here's my question, does she end up blending into the ether of the Democratic Party and becoming neoliberal, or does she accomplish her goals? Because that's the thing, she talks about socialism like she's ready to do the Green New Deal and the leftist talking points, but I really feel like she's going to end up just blending into neoliberal leftism, leftism.
She already has, she already has. So? Remember when Saikat Chakrabarti, her campaign manager, who came over from big tech, and I'm not super familiar on his background, so I don't want to muddy the greater point that I'm going to make here that is informed and accurate. But I think he was like an actual communist, really actually wanted to destroy capitalism. So he was ousted from being her chief of staff after he compared moderate Democrats to Southern Democrats of the 40s and 50s and 60s who were racist and former Klan members and yada yada.
Yeah, he's talking about Rust Belt, more or less Rust Belt Democrats, I guess.
Yeah, and so he was already treading on ruffling some feathers. Here's the thing to remember about AOC. This is why people like her are so perfect. When you're that stupid, so AOC was submitted to run for office by her brother. Like she was like a bachelorette candidate. Like you can verify that she was literally like put on a website, like a dating website, except for being a congressional candidate.
Wow, I didn't know
And what
this.
happens is, yeah, and what happens is the tech billionaires and people like George Soros and whoever and the Justice Democrats, they see someone like AOC and they've got a more sinister, I use these terms, a more sinister and insidious agenda. They see someone like AOC and they're like, she is
That is
perfect.
perfect.
Because they're
Perfect.
like, this is
Just, I
perfect.
mean, you check all the little boxes.
Yeah.
You're cute, you're Hispanic, you're brown to where brown people identify with you. You have the story of the up and coming brown woman from the city in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
You check all. I'll let you go, but yeah, you're right. That's interesting.
And so you're used as a tool to advance this narrative, but in reality, in terms of material outcome, you're nothing but a tool of neoliberal corporate power. And so it's like you said with what neoliberal fan fiction said, was that that's what you have on the left. You're going to have that element of corporate power that has an interest in promoting radical intersectionality and diversity. And what it ultimately is destroying the cultural homogeneity of a respective country. So
If you want to break it down into one word, it's anti-white.
yeah, I mean, yeah, but that's what anti-white.
But yeah, that's
It's about destroying the cultural homogeneity of a country.
right.
We happen to be white. You know, if we were black and they were white, it would be anti-black. It's about
Exactly.
right.
It's yeah, exactly. But in this context, yeah, exactly. Agree with you.
it's anti-white. So, anyways, no, with AOC, she's already fallen on me. Look at her tweets. She just kind of tweets out these sort of platitudes, and she just has a few regurgitations that she throws in and out of the washer. And it's like, if you think that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is gonna like lead some like socialist revolution, you're just not very smart. Like, you know, if you think she's going to fall, here's what happens. This is how it works in politics, and people just don't understand this. Someone like AOC, she gets elected to Congress. She's a former bartender. She gets to Congress and she's idolized by millions of people. And she says, you know what? I kind of like this. Like, this is cool. And you've got money and you've got fame and you've got adoration from millions
Total
of
clout.
people.
Total clout.
Total
I mean,
clout. And you're like, huh, like I really like this. And, you know, Nancy Pelosi's just kind of made it clear that, you know, I pretty much just have to stay off these few topics and kind of just can comport myself in this way rather than this way. But everyone else is too stupid to really like kind of realize that I've changed it all. And I get to like be one of the most famous people in the world and an eventual
literally, literally.
senator of New York. And like, that's cool with me, you know? And so, no, I mean, you know, she's fallen in her place and she'll continue to stay in
She'll
her
fall
place.
into place. That's true.
We
One of
already
the
have,
funny before we move on as far as worldwide recognition, something that was interesting to me. I heard this on some podcast I was listening to. AOC is one of the few politicians you can actually think of in American history where they're referred to only by their initials.
yeah,
JFK, LBJ,
FD.
RFK, FDR, and AOC. And did you think the founders really envisioned a future where Ilhan Omar and AOC were like significant contributors to the public discourse? No. And
Of
that's
course.
what you always need to look at when you look at these people. And I had a tweet, it was one of my early tweets that went viral. It was Stacey Abrams giving some like foul fake, she's very gross physiognomy. And Stacey Abrams is like giving some speech and she's like pointing at people. And I quote tweeted it and I said, do you think that this is really the future that the founders imagined? Like, like gross people, gross certain women lecturing white America on their privilege and how they're horrible. This is not what the founders wanted. Now you can make the argument. This is actually why I have a lot more respect. I wouldn't say a lot more, a little bit more respect for the left than I do for the centrist right. The left would look at that story and say, no, the founders were evil. Everything they did needs to be overturned, and this is an act of war. Normie cons and maybe center leftists like neoliberal Democrats would say, well, no, she's just misguided. It's like,
No,
well,
no,
if she was
what
just a Republican, she'd be fine. And it's like, no,
What they would say is maybe that, but I think more so what they would say is he'd be like, well, I don't think the founders knew what was going to happen, which is just shows the brilliance of the Constitution they made, that it could be amended and that we could provide an opportunity for people to speak and people and we could all have free speech. And they would just turn it into this, appeal to the founders and their brilliance. And like, yeah, of course, I like and respect the founding fathers.
Right.
They were brilliant men, but of course not. Of
I don't
course,
think they could have ever seen the level of subversiveness that we've seen in this country. I don't think they ever foresaw like the ability for non-governmental organizations to influence public policy. I don't think they ever saw an APAC happening. I don't think they ever saw mass migration happening via boats and buses and planes. They never saw this. They assumed that the demographic makeup of the bill that they were signing during that time would stay that way. Like it was built into their presuppositions.
Yeah, that's the word I was going to. It was such a presupposition that they didn't even feel the need.
It was like, why would we talk about immigration? Why would we talk about abortion? These things are like, that's fine. We're fine there.
Well, and if you think they were like, there's eventually going to be people coming over from the Muslim lands and people, when we talk about Hispanics now, we're talking about who were savages at the time,
Right. Like, at the time they literally were.
Yeah. They were the savages, you think the savages or followers of Muhammad, as they called them back then, that they were going to want to come to our country and that they were going to influence our public policy. Free speech was founded, and I'm directly quoting Nick here, but free speech was founded for distinctions between Protestants and Catholics. And there was still serious reservation over that. This was not the idea that free speech included some Hispanic woman to like lecture.
Or frankly, I'll go here. The idea that free speech was meant to include an illiterate slave to bash the founders of the country is total ethno-narcissism.
Yeah, it is.
It's putting yourself at the center of a picture that wasn't necessarily painted for you. Maybe you're in the picture, but the story does not revolve around you. It revolves around a people that founded a colony in Virginia in the 1600s. Yeah. It was not about slaves. Slaves were actually an afterthought. And framing our entire morality around slavery, and I'm going on a limb here, I'm risking myself, but centering everything in our moral universe around slavery and the Holocaust and World War II, that is not how we need to move forward. I really don't see that. We have to have an affirmative worldview where we are pro-America. So
that's a great point. I mean, that was a great point. And like, I
hate saying that because it sounds a certain way, but it's like,
the idea, this is what we have to dispel though. The idea that that's even remotely controversial. What you just said is true. It's just true. Like if you think our founding fathers, like, this is all going to come full circle like a movie. And eventually, like, we're going to fight a war and the good guys are going to be the bad guys. And then eventually we're going to have slaves actually dictating policy.
Yeah. As if when they were signing the Constitution, they were like, guys, are y'all ready for them to rule over us now? We're going to do the moral good in 300 years and they're going to rule over us and we're going to pay our dues. It's like, no, it was a very unique country with a very specific ideology. And that ideology did not dictate, or it wasn't centered around righting the wrongs 300 years later of some vague moral injustice that they did to a certain group of people, but also simultaneously slavery had been enacted by every single group across the world for the last 10,000 years. Why was slavery any more unique?
And not that it's not even that we have to justify or not justify slavery, but it was literally proposed to Western travelers by Africans. They were like, hey, we've got these prisoners of war. You want to buy them off us? And so like, and of course, slavery had been invented 1,000 years prior by Muslims.
Oh, more? Well, no, not even that.
Right. In terms of transnational slave. Right. So,
but even the concept of slavery was not anything new in the world. No. In the world story.
It was it'd been around for the entirety of world history. Some people were slaves. It's
The
just
only the only unique thing about white Americans and WASPs and Europeans was their ability to end the moral injustice. That's the only unique part about this slavery, is the ability of self-reflection and saying, hey, actually, we need to stop this because this is wrong.
Yeah.
And sure, it is wrong. But the only thing that's focused on is the evil of the action, not the ability to end it. And that's actually where leftists have no argument. When you tell them that, slavery was always around, and blah, 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 and we were the first ones to end it, their eyes glaze over. They can't even conceptualize the fact that we were the first ones to end it, and we were.
And it doesn't matter because that doesn't even,
it doesn't register.
Like I said, though, in the last week, it doesn't matter because they have a greater worldview, and it doesn't matter if a specific fact, even though of course that's a pillar of like their whole belief, it doesn't matter if something about violates that or doesn't comport with that narrative, the structural narrative that they've established, because the narrative has been entrenched so firmly in their line of thinking. It doesn't matter. So you could have a little factoid, an inconvenient factoid. You can prove in 5 minutes, you can disprove their entire worldview. It doesn't matter to them. It just doesn't even, you could literally, it's like Joe Biden could literally spit on a black kid, call him the hard R N word, and he'd get 85% of the black vote.
I had a tweet like that. Exactly.
Yeah, I know. I retweeted that, but
it's true though. He could walk Joe. Exactly. That is so.
Say, come here, boy. Spit in his face.
90% of the black vote.
And Jamel Hill would defend it.
Jamel Hill would say, look, guys, the context behind the spit was that he was trying to give him his good genes, because Biden is old and healthy and he's like transferring his spit to the black man's face to it goes into his pores actually. And
it's a show. It's a show of honor. And the reason Joe Biden called him boy is because we know his folksy background. He's a working class man.
No. Actually, it's boy. Boy means son. And he meant that like black people like his children. And we love Biden because we are like his young children or some, like you could play these language games.
Any sort of mental gymnastics. There's a litany of different.
Dude, if mental gymnastics were an Olympic category, Jamel Hill would be a Chinese, one of the springboard people that goes and then lands with 2 feet, and like she would have the gold medals that Michael Phelps has, and people like that. They will hurt themselves going over the leaps and bounds defending the left. So I totally agree with you. Huge agree.
There was one thing that you brought up that led me to, this is what it is. When we talk about how you could materially disprove the structural worldview of a leftist, or, really they're a tool of neoliberal corporate power who thinks they're like a little leftist and they're just really a pathetic, neurotic, over-socialized freak. It doesn't matter if you disprove it, because to them it's so zero sum. Their mindset is our side is good, their side is bad. There's no nuance. So we're going to relate this back to free speech. Our side is good, their side is bad. There's no need for nuance. It doesn't matter if they want to try to interject, inconvenient things done in bad faith to undercut our attempt to, to generate equity and fair to whatever, all the terms that they use. That doesn't matter. To them, it doesn't matter. And they'll say it doesn't matter. On the right is the idea that, we have to like prove things using logic and like da-da-da-da-da. Ben Shapiro says facts don't care about your feelings. Dude, feelings don't care about your facts. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? People will always respond.
Literally don't care about your facts, right?
Well, no, people don't. Right. People don't. You can all.
Shapiro actually doesn't truly. I'll let you go. But truly, Shapiro truly doesn't actually believe that.
Of course he doesn't. It just fits his little brand, like his whatever.
Right. It's like his pin. It's his pin tweet with 20,000 retweets. Facts don't care about your feelings. Then hey, let's talk about Charles Murray and the bell curve. Well, let's talk about crime stats then, Ben. Do you want to talk about the genetic element to IQ? No.
Ben Ben Shapiro, you know, he's got the brand of the fast talking logician, like whatever. Like it doesn't, we don't even need to, we don't
Yeah,
even need
we know the architect there.
yeah, but as it pertains to, you know, emotional appeals will always override intellectual ones. Now, they're most effective when you can apply some intellectual elements to an emotional appeal to make someone feel like the truth, the conclusion they've reached is has a higher level of validation. That's
Right.
always helpful. But yeah, Barack Obama get the most votes in electoral history by saying the two words hope and change. And that's like all he just says, we're gonna bring change and we need hope. And like, and you can actually just go on and repeat a bunch of stupid platitudes that appeal to 90 IQ idiots and also a bunch of self-loathing whites. And like
Well,
that's gonna that's gonna be effective. And then meanwhile, on the right, we're supposed to actually, like, here's why, you know, Barack Obama wasn't da 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 da. And they're like, oh, wait, you're trying to refute Barack Obama after the brilliant speech he just made. Oh, you know, you can't do that now because we just banned your Twitter account, you know, and
right.
now FBI, now the anti-racism department, like Ibram Kendi wants to
Yes, that
start.
is so important. It's so important
They
because
want to listen. This is the last thing. They want to wield institutional power to actively advance and enforce their vision for the world. They don't care about free speech. We'll never convince them to care about free speech. For once, we have to go on the offensive and do what we can to stop them from advancing their ambitions. It's that
exactly.
simple. We have to wield power in any way we can accrue it, whether it be state power, institutional
I
power,
don't care.
governmental power.
Exactly.
I don't care. I
I
want
don't
to take
care.
power. I want to take power. I want to kill pornographers. I want to kill pedophiles,
Pedophiles.
and I want to suppress and repress people who undercut the America First agenda. Period. I want them silenced. Period. There's
Right.
no, we have to apply the same zero sum principles
That
that they
they're putting
apply.
on us. Exactly.
Period. There's no more discussion to be had. You can make the argument against free speech in a paragraph. Stop nuancing it. Maybe you'll think twice when you're in jail for racism.
Exactly.
Period.
Well,
Period.
and then the red pill for me was that I realized that I would be in jail for racism if the rubber met the road and they got their racial justice courts and online accountability courts that they're talking about, like Ibram Kennedy's talking about. I would be in jail, like literally with you, actually, like if they got their way, because I'm over here talking about IQ, paleoconservatism. They would actually treat me worse because I'm viewed as a traitor,
Yeah.
actually, when you think about it. I
Yeah.
don't care because you live once and you just speak the truth. But man, these people are coming for blood. They're coming for your family. They are really coming for everything that we view as moral and decent in this country. And, you know, conservatives can sit on the fence as much as they want. And I'm sure there's a few of them that will watch this video and say, well, I like Carter and JB, but going against free speech, that's a step too far for me. And it's like, okay, well, keep saying that until they come knocking on your door because you shared a meme about how Obama was a bad president. And that actually proves systemic racism because you don't like a black man in power and blah, blah, blah. They are coming for you on through every avenue that you can even imagine.
Yeah.
Every avenue. And they'll only realize it once they're knocking at their door.
I think we both just made great statements that are a great way to conclude the free speech portion of this because we've been going about 55 minutes or so.
Are we really?
And yeah, which I didn't even think,
I
but
thought we were at 30.
I think I think this has been a phenomenal video. Why don't we do the questions
You
that
want to do
people
the Q&A?
because I feel like it's probably when we can keep the videos around an hour, it's like they're kind of good. It's like a whole podcast. Like
I wasn't even keeping track of time. That's the only reason I didn't call it out sooner. I thought we were at like 40 minutes. So that's how good our convos are. Okay, so there's 3 questions. One came in since I posted the link to the video. And okay. We'll go on to the first one. All right. So we got one from he said I could shout him out on Twitter. Mr. B. Groiper, MRB Groiper. He says, "Hey dude, I've enjoyed watching your show. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on fiefdom and monarchy." So Carter talk, I don't know. So basically he talks about democracy and monarchy. So I'll get into the last portion. He says, democracy also actively promotes the idea that people can consciously figure out on their own what's good for them, that they magically reach that ability as adults. The reality is that most people need to be told and made to do what's best for them at any age because they can't manage it for themselves. Consider how many, parenthetically, consider how many people are seeing a therapist and taking pills because they don't understand themselves. Personally, it offends my conscience that beings who can't critically think actively affect my life while every social medium and phone app is telling them how and when to vote. Concise version, it would be great if you could discuss your thoughts on monarchy. Briefly, thoughts on monarchy, Carter?
So
there's two easier questions after this. This is a very broad question.
My favorite political philosopher is Thomas Hobbes. And what's interesting is they say
based Hobbesian.
Yeah, he was like, well, yes, I do think of myself as a based Hobbesian. They say Thomas Hobbes is the founder of liberalism, which when you discuss it from the context of social contract theory, I suppose, sort of, when you talk about the establishment of government, which was used to, ultimately at a basic level to create liberalism. So that's. I
think the huge X factor on that is that they could never have envisioned the world of diversity.
No, and
we're living in right now. That's a total side point, but
we're not even gonna get into liberalism here. So Thomas Hobbes rejected hereditary monarchy in that, I'm a king, then my son is the king, and then his daughter is the queen. He rejected that. But what Thomas Hobbes did advocate for was something of an elected monarchy, the establishment of what we call the sovereign, which is where you have a ruler who wields absolute power, who controls the state power, the power, ultimately really in conjunction, sort of in cooperation with the church, whatever. But you've got one guy calling all the shots at a basic level. That's just a very rudimentary, very ancillary description of it. So I've written on Thomas Hobbes quite frequently throughout my academic career. And I ask the question, this is also, you can use this so let's associate diversity with democracy, because that's what it is. Democracy is a political manifestation of diversity, be it intellectual, cultural, social, ethnic, religious, whatever.
Democratization word literally just means giving things to a lot of different people.
Right. This is an example here. So you've got two islands. Okay. On one island, you have 10 people, and there's 2 of every race, color, creed, culture. You've got really 5 different groups on one island. Then on the other island, you've got one group of 10 people, same culture, same color, same creed, same religion, same convictions, whatever. Which one is going to do better? Of course, it's going to be the unitary.
The latter.
Of course, it's going to be the unitary group. We fool ourselves and we say, so you apply, we say our diversity is a strength. So you say, no, because on the island with the conflicting groups, they're going to come together, and like one's going to make really good food. The other's going to provide a different perspective on something. And then like, they're ultimately going to be better like than the other one because they have different perspectives. And that's the length of it. And it's like, that's just the dumbest thing really that I've ever heard. So let's apply it. Let's apply that to government. Let's say whether you can have an elected monarchy. So you have monarchy, a loose form of monarchy, but ultimately monarchical power rests with one individual. What is better? I love what Nick Fuentes, I'm going to quote him directly. You take the wisest, strongest, most capable man and just make him an absolute dictator. I'm directly quoting Nick Fuentes here. You do that, or you let a bunch of idiots elect other idiots.
Right.
So Of course, in an ideal world, I want a Christian king. Like I want a King David. I want a King. I mean, obviously King Solomon had some,
Or
you know,
King Trump, King
right. Yeah.
Donald
I mean,
Trump.
yes. Yes.
Not his lineage, because his sons are not as great as
Right.
him. I can
I
tell.
would elect. I would
I get
elect
your
Donald
point, though.
Trump. I would elect Donald Trump as king of America
I
right
would
now.
too.
I would
Easily.
vote to make him an absolute dictator.
It wouldn't be a problem for me. I'd be like, yeah, he wants what's best for us. I'm fine.
I trust him to make decisions more than I trust the greater body of Americans to elect representatives to be idiots. I want Senate Democrats executed, I like legally. I don't want people to go kill them. I want to be clear about that. I don't even, maybe not that I don't want them executed. I don't want them to have any say in our political process.
Yes. Okay. There you go. Cool.
Period. So I will sort of retract that. I don't want like them killed because they're Democrats. I just don't.
You want them removed, and you want them to face
Yeah.
rule of law for the treason and the evil they've committed.
Well, and just they can just be citizens like the rest of us. You can be, and I'm open to some sort of, it's like Napoleon. You can have a parliament where like they can like sort of pass more inconsequential laws that sort of affect the daily administrative
Maybe
things.
they need to be bureaucrats, not politicians.
Right. And the king is going to have the final say like over everything. And he can unilaterally with a flick of a wrist come in and nullify any sort of democratically established law, any legislatively achieved rule. And so you have to ask yourself that question, what's better? That's in sum, my answer is, what's better? Idiots electing idiots or a wise dictator, a wise king? It's not a question. It's a rhetorical question because we know the answer. Anyone with a functioning brain knows the answer.
The reason that I'm in support, this is my very brief answer. I don't have as much info on that as you do, but my brief answer for why I support monarchy is because it's inherently anti-equality. There are people that are better than other people. I'm sorry to say that. Not everyone is equal. Not everyone is as good at or as talented of a person as the person that they come across on the sidewalk every day. There are better people than others. There are better families than others. There are people that deserve more of a say in the public discourse than other people. I hate to say that. It's a tough pill to swallow. The Roosevelts deserve more of a say in public discourse than the family living in the lowest income zip code in America. I'm sorry. It is what it is. I'm anti-equality. I'm pro certain people maybe kind of dictating what happens to the average Joe. And as long as you can prove that they actually care about the people that live in their country, then I'm fine with it. So
I agree.
And I think it's a last point. I think it's a high IQ trait. This is the last thing I'll say about this one. As far as ending universal suffrage goes, it's a high IQ trait. And I want everyone to listen to this. It's a high IQ trait to be able to endorse an ideology that may preclude you from participating in it if it means something better for the host nation or the people as a whole. When you hear Carter and I's criteria, think about this. When you hear Carter and I's criteria of universal suffrage, and we say, well, you must be a net tax contributor for 3 years. You must be a landowner. You must be married, whatever the criteria is. And you find yourself saying, well, I don't fall into that, but I deserve to vote. No. Be high IQ. Maybe there's a certain point where you have to say, maybe I'm excluded from this process, but other great people will make the right decision. That's how society functioned for the last 10,000 years. Great men decided great things. Yeah. Not everyone always had a say, and that's not the norm. Yeah. It's not the norm.
Agree.
So, next question. This one's a little shorter. This is from at Saxon Status. On Twitter. He says, do you think Q content creators are more co-opted than the actual poster itself? I have a few Q folks in my family, and what little I've seen, a lot of the overall lore comes from YouTubers and Facebook accounts. If you do think it's more than just midwits and the misguided, do you think this is why Q followers and the Q lore vehemently refuses to criticize a certain group of transnational cosmopolitans? It's
Like,
basically like, where do you think Q is co-opted? Do you think basically, this is my really quick take on this. I do think the Q content creators, I don't necessarily think they're co-opted. I think they're clout chasing. I think they are jumping on the bandwagon of something they see as really successful Q lore, and boomers love to click on it and share it and act like they're woke. The reason Q doesn't mention subversive elements, and we all know what that means, being optical, it's because that would totally kill their brand, and they're already co-opted. So I do think Q is a bit of a distraction, but it gets people in the right mindset about the cabal and pedophilia and Satanism.
yeah, I look, I don't have a huge look, groups have, characteristics, white people, black people, yes, Jewish people, all people, they have certain characteristics. So look, do I care that, look, I don't, I just don't care about like Israel. Like I care about when you
Exactly. I totally agree.
I just think let's just stop with the Jew stuff, and it's like just stop making it like let's like I love what Patrick Casey says. Like, don't be a schizophrenic. Like, name them. Like,
I
name them.
love that. I
Like,
love that, because here's the thing. You're actually, when you focus on Israel too much, you're actually not being America first.
you're not. It's about America.
It's
It's not
about
about
America. I'm
Israel.
indifferent. Now, I will admit that we do need to take their influence, like APAC. APAC is probably the best example I can think of. Maybe there doesn't need to be an APAC, but I'm not going to spend all my time naming them and going through the early life all day. We know what's going on. What I care about is America. I don't care about foreign entanglements. We're like
Yeah.
the forefathers here, man.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just don't even look. Yeah. Q, like you said, it's directionally correct. Like about the pedophiles. No, I don't care that they're not like naming Israel, like whatever. Like a lot
Exactly.
of people, if there are white people who are pedophiles, yeah. If you, yes, this is an empirical fact. A lot of these people who are found to be pedophiles, they are Jewish, like
Right.
whatever, like whether it's endemic to their nature, like whatever. I don't care. Like I
That's
want people
not,
I want people talking about pedophiles and the Satan worshiping and the child sacrifice more than I care.
then I care about the JQ.
That's worth it to me more than like it's Jew. I just don't,
I
whatever,
totally agree.
whatever.
I
Just
think our side tends to get lost on that a little bit. And it's like, I
I
agree that
don't
that's a problem.
just understand that groups have characteristics, period, like every group does, and make decisions off it from an America First perspective. That's
I
so
like
that's
that.
that's
I didn't think that that would be your take. I like that take. I thought you would be further right than that. I thought you would go different, but no, no, no. I like that take. I think you're right,
oh,
because I think it actually detracts from paleoconservatism
dude.
when we're doing what we say they do.
I
We're focusing on a country 6,000 miles away. Granted, they have influence here, and we need to end that. But I'm not gonna. That's not what every issue comes down to for me. I care about America. I
I
totally agree.
it's just cringe. We can move on to the next question. It's just cringe to obsess over Israel and like name them. It's just gay, honestly. Like it's just gay. Groups have characteristics. Make America First decisions off of them. Just period. That's really all.
Exactly.
I'll just leave it at that.
I think that's a good framing as when you look at diversity issues. You just need to look at what's good for America, and putting people in positions of power just because they're a certain skin color does not help America. So,
Right.
so the last question, this is an incredibly short one, is from an e-girl. I'm not going to name her. I don't name e-girls. Um, she says,
Don't
question.
validate them.
I'm not going to validate her. Her question will get asked, but she's not getting any clout from this. It says, question. When will or how does America First include women, young women? Literally a real question I got. Hey,
Uh,
Carter. Hey, Carter. How does America First include women?
Look, I'll answer this. It includes women by encouraging. It includes women by encouraging strong families and strong fathers who raise their daughters in a Christ-like way, who teach them to embrace traditional feminine values and don't teach you to reject third and fourth wave feminism, and like helping girls recognize that it's
Reject
not
modernity.
reject modernity, embrace tradition, and don't go out and be a fucking whore. Like it's just that.
It's literally not that. women
Literally
in
not that hard. Like,
women in the America First Amendment. And I'm not right because she's gonna watch this, and I appreciate the question. I get it, but you to this girl, you know my style. It's not. I'm not gonna pander. You should probably like log off and just like raise your kids and get married and go to mass. Like, frankly, it's like not that complicated. How does it include women? Let your men be strong and let them be paleo conservatives and America firsters without busting their balls and like cook them a dinner.
yeah,
Like, it's don't be easy. Just be tradition, be truly trad, delete the apps, stop whatever degeneracy you're doing. And I literally think everything will fall in place.
log off, log off.
We already had to do it to Gabby Katharina. We had to make her delete her
Yeah.
socials.
Take the nose ring out. Take the nose ring out. Spend time with your dad.
The father. Hey, take the father pill. The
Yeah.
father pill is the
Take
real
the
pill.
father.
With
Take the patriarchy pill.
patriarch pilled, father pilled.
Yeah.
Be that way as a young man or a young woman, and you will be fine later in life. Have your
Right.
dad in your life.
Just just embrace Christian principles and advocate for them.
And that's totally in line with Christian principles. Know your father.
Of course, of course.
So, anything else you wanted to hit tonight? I think we did a good video. I think we did a good one, right?
I think this is our best video. I think
You think so?
I think we should tell I think this is our best video. I checked the score. So I'm gonna tell the crowd. So Jordan and I went in on a parlay on the NFL. We had the Bills, the Packers, the Bucks, and the Chiefs winning. The Bucks are up 20 with like 3 minutes to play.
What's up with the Chiefs?
The Chiefs already won. So I'm winning anywhere from $400 to $1,500 tonight. So
based and financed pilled.
finance check on my off day, on the Lord's day, we still get paid. We talk free speech. We're America first. Jordan.
It is what it is. We're making money and we're doing talks. We are promoting the message. You got me high energy tonight, dude. I was a little bit reflective before this talk. You got me high energy, so I appreciate you, bro.
I was lethargic as well.
Yeah. That's the word. I was lethargic as before this. I feel good. We won the parlay. We did a good interview.
Let's go.
Cash out, baby.
Yeah, I think this is good, man. I think this is our best video.
I think so too, man. All right. Next video, maybe next weekend if you're down.
Yeah.
All right, bro.
Let's do it.
All right, guys. Enjoy. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, all the good stuff. Hope you enjoyed. Follow me on Twitter, Jordan B Videos. You can find Carter through there. I'll see you later, guys. Later, Carter.
Good stuff.
Yep.